All right, new GMs, it's time for us to have a little talk.
In the dungeon, reach the sky. Maps unfold, pathways lie.
What we are going to talk about today is the best advice that new GMs need to hear and understand when preparing to run games. And you might be surprised. This isn't actually about specifically D&D or even a specific TTRPG or monster stats or balancing combat or anything else like that. This isn't even about creating an immersive world or creating an awesome plot or even giving your players agency. What I'm talking about is the craft of being a GM, and this is what I want to discuss. Being a GM, running a game, is a specific type of skill. It's a specific type of craft. In some ways, it's sort of like being a storyteller. And in some ways, it's like being a community organizer. And then in some ways, it's like being a public speaker. In some ways, it's like being a theater actor. In some ways, it's like being a mathematician. In some ways, it's like being a teacher for people who don't know how to play the game. And in some ways, it's like being a friend. And then in some ways, it is also like organizing a cooperative endeavor in sort of a managerial leadership sense. So being a GM incorporates many different skills, many different abilities. And it is daunting to new GMs. And if you are a new GM, I'm very glad you're watching this because I'm about to tell you the number one piece of advice that you really need to understand if you want to go from where you are now to getting actually really, really good at running games to such a degree that players love your games and they want to keep coming back and playing with you week after week. I've been running games for over 2 decades, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that this algorithm, this formula, will work. So here's what it is. Where are you now? Just starting out, unsure of yourself. Maybe you haven't run a game yet. Maybe you've run a few games, but you're a little bit discouraged. Maybe you feel like you're not sure if you're ever going to be good at this new cool hobby you've discovered. Or maybe you're doing pretty good and you're successful, but you want to improve. Or maybe you felt like you started out strong, but then you feel like things kind of fell apart and you're not sure where to take it now. These are all very valid things to feel, and most GMs are going to go through all of those at some point. Okay. This is very normal. So, how do you get through them? How do you actually succeed? Okay. I'm going to give you an algorithm, a formula for this. And here's how you actually succeed at becoming a top level GM. And when I say top level, I mean the best GM in your area, the best GM in your genre, the best GM your friends have ever played with. So good at GMing that when players play with you, they think you're in the top 5 of GMs they've ever played with, if not the best GM they've ever played with. So here's the formula. Improvement as a GM equals taking action plus perseverance plus continuous learning plus self-compassion. Now, let me tell you why this is the formula for success. By the way, do you struggle to come up with plot arcs on the fly? If so, I have the perfect tool for you. It is called My Ultimate Plot Randomizer. It is a free ebook. When you join my email list, you can download this for free. You'll get the link in your first email. It contains 4 D100 tables that will let you roll random plot arcs whenever you need them. Roll the hook, the conflict, and the conclusion, and even add wild and wacky stuff all right there. Download this, print it out, add it to your tool collection, and you will never go without another plot arc again. I give this away for free to help you create awesome plot arcs just like I do. I use this in almost every single session, and you are not going to want to miss out on this, so make sure you grab this. GMing is a skill, and it is a very unique skill. If you have skill in theater, you may be relatively well equipped to be a GM, but not completely. If you have skill as a personal administrator, you may be interestingly well prepared to be a GM. If you have experience as a leadership figure or a manager, if you've led teams before or you've managed departments, then you actually might be relatively well suited to be a GM, all things considered, but you do not have the whole skill set. Being a GM is a very diverse skill set, and it's going to require a certain amount of learning. Now, here's what usually happens. A lot of times people get started with GMing and they jump in. The first game might go really well or it might go terribly. I have talked to people who have felt it went both ways. But a lot of times you get your feet wet, you learn some of the rules, and you start playing, and you feel pretty good about it in the sense that you begin to improve very rapidly. This is the initial curve, the initial upward trajectory, and you feel really good about it. And this is awesome. But then a lot of people hit like a crash point. They kind of hit a point where they feel like I was doing so good at this. Why am I suffering at it now? Why does it feel like I can't get it to work right? There was all that magic in the first 4 sessions I ran, but why is it starting to feel weird now? Why is it starting to peter out? Why are we starting to lose momentum? Why do I feel like I'm not doing as good a job? So, whenever you're dealing with a skill, you're going to have an initial point where you're going to feel like you're making a lot of progress. And the reason for this is because you, knowing almost nothing about the skill or the hobby or the craft, you learn a lot really quick, relatively speaking. Yesterday you knew 0% about this. Today you know 100% more than you did. And that is a fairly easy marker to continue to hit because your backlog of knowledge is just small, relatively speaking. So you learn, and then the next day you learn, and the next session you learn, and the next session you learn, and you just keep incrementally just shooting upwards at your ability to perform the skill well. And it's like every new thing you try is better than the last, and it just blows away what you did yesterday because you are learning so much at such a fast pace. And all of that new knowledge represents a massive percentage of your knowledge of the whole hobby. And so this feels very groundbreaking. Now, this is very common in any skill-based thing, but a lot of people then will hit what they call the plateau. You'll hit a point where you have enough backlog knowledge that you actually know quite a bit about what's going on. So for GMing, you know quite a bit about GMing. So much so that now when you're learning, it feels like the percentage value across the board of the stuff you're learning is growing smaller and smaller as your knowledge base grows, the knowledge base you already have. There was a point in time where you could learn 100% of everything you know about GMing by studying for an afternoon. Now you're learning maybe 5% of what you know. And so your research does not feel like it's yielding as big a results, even though technically speaking, objectively it is. Relatively speaking, it does not feel that way. Hey, real quick, are you tired of rolling the same old dungeon loot using these same old methods time after time, game after game? Well, I have a solution for you. This is how I roll all of my dungeon loot now. It's a book I created called the Ultimate Dungeon Loot Randomizer. This book contains 10 massive D100 tables full of awesome dungeon loot. Roll on a table for mundane items, slightly magical dungeon items, mundane weapons and armor, magical weapons and armor, individual pieces of treasure, magic scrolls, potions and elixirs, cursed items, forgotten wonders and otherworldly relics, and even full chests of treasure and loot. This book is now available on my Blurb bookstore in 3 different versions. There's a hardcover option, a softcover option that's more affordable, and a super affordable digital ebook option. It's even system agnostic, meaning you can use it with any fantasy TTRPG system, and you can just adapt it to the rule set you're using. Link is in the description. Don't miss out. Grab it today. And then you also hit a plateau with your performance. You saw monumental progress every time you ran a session when you were first starting. This is how it goes for a lot of people. This is not how it goes for everyone. I'm just saying this is a pretty typical arc that some beginning GMs go on. And then you hit a plateau. And then you think, man, why? I don't feel like I'm getting any better. And the reason for this is because our expectations continue to grow along that same trajectory that we were experiencing when we first started the hobby. So we had this like super upward arc, and our expectations continued to climb that way. But the truth is that as you gain more experience, your arc is going to level out and you're going to kind of hit a plateau, and then you're going to gradually increase in skill now because your backlog of experience information is much bigger than it was. And now forward progress, even though it is forward progress, is not going to feel as stark as it did at first. And we might also face some setbacks. We're going to make some mistakes. We're going to learn from experience, right? We're not going to do everything perfectly. So this is going to be the arc, and then you'll gradually increase now. And then you may have a dip, and then you'll increase a little bit more. And then you'll have a dip, a little setback, and you'll increase some more, right? And this is going to be pretty much the trajectory until, we look back on 5 years of running games and realize that we have gained a tremendous amount of experience. We've learned a tremendous amount, even though every day kind of felt like a tiny bit. The truth is that it was a lot once you add it all together. And this brings us to the give up point. There are a lot of people out there who want to be a GM who quit when they hit the plateau or when they make their first mistake or when they first start to dip. They get really excited at first and then they hit a rough spot, right? Something happens, maybe a game falls apart or they have a situation conflict with a player, or they have a session that goes just really rough and they get negative feedback about it, makes them feel bad about it. Whatever it is, they face a setback and they might be tempted to give up. Maybe they face a couple setbacks and then they do give up. So there's a percentage of people who start out with the hobby trying to GM and then they have a bad experience and they do give up. Sometimes this bad experience is just how the progression is. Sometimes it's because they're playing with the wrong players. Sometimes because they have a bad experience with players. Sometimes it's because they start with a system that is not well suited to them. And so they think, man, I don't want to fight this the whole time like this. And rather than trying a new system, they bounce or whatever. Okay. So this is sometimes what happens. How do we overcome this? I believe that being a GM is a skill, and I believe it is a skill that anyone can do. But I do believe that the GM, the game master, the person who runs games, this is almost a different hobby than a player. TTRPG game master is a certain type of person. And you kind of know if you are that, right? I mean, you know if you want to do that. Sometimes you have to try it first, but it's almost like a different breed. Not everybody wants to do this. When I sit down at a gaming table with players, a lot of the times, the majority of the players at the table would feel relatively uncomfortable running a game, or they wouldn't want to. I have had exceptions to this. In fact, some of the best long-term groups I've ever played with were with groups of other people who also GM'd. And I think the reason for that is because GMing makes you a more mature gamer. That's how it is with my Discord group. Every single person in my Discord group right now is also a game master. And the result is that they're a very mature group of gamers. And this is the same with my core group. I think that only one player in my current core group, and that's my youngest player, every other person has either GM'd in the past or are currently running maybe 1, 2, even 3 other games somewhere else. So if you are a GM, it changes your perspective on the game a little bit. Okay. Now let's talk about this formula and why this is important. The formula for becoming a better game master is to improve as a GM, to see improvement, to master the craft. You have to take action, you have to persevere, you have to continue to learn, and you have to have self-compassion. Okay, so let's talk about these things for a minute. The taking action step. This journey begins with the first step. You dive into game mastering by running sessions, even if they are small or informal. You don't want to wait for the perfect moment or feel like you need to know everything before you start. Practical experience is invaluable. This is so true. And just the other day in my Discord group, which you can join, link is down in the description. Just the other day, I had a person in my Discord group talking about how they were afraid to run their first session. But once they got up the courage and they did it, they were so pumped, could not wait for the next session. This is what I love to hear, because this is someone who got started. They actually got started. So if you are a budding GM and you think to yourself, I'd love to run a game, but you just aren't doing it, maybe out of fear for some reason, then here's my message to you. Do it. Whether it's with one other person or 20 other people, no matter what, like, your family or friends, go to the local game store, talk to the owner about starting a game. I'll bet you if you go to the local game store, you can start a game, or join my Discord, start a game. I have a whole channel in my Discord called Looking for Games, and it's basically players and GMs trying to find games, GMs looking for games, etc. A lot of people running games in there, and it's awesome. There are ways that you can start and get practical experience, and it is so crucial if you want to be a GM that you just start, because no amount of reading or watching videos is going to fully prepare you for the experience as much as taking action and getting started. And that's going to lead us to perseverance. Okay. And we talked about that arc earlier, that upward arc, but then you hit that plateau. Some people give up when they start to hit that plateau, or when they start to experience setbacks, issues, problems. Friends, I have made a lot of big gaming mistakes. I have ruined games with my mistakes. I have run games into the ground. I have had games stall out and just have them fall apart. And if I didn't go through these things, I wouldn't be the GM I am today, and I wouldn't know as much about the skill and about the hobby and about the game as I do today. So what's really important is that we stay committed to improving, even when faced with challenges or setbacks. Not every game will go as planned. Use each experience as an opportunity to grow. Keep scheduling sessions and stay engaged with your players, and it will be okay. Perseverance, the long game, is the key to becoming a true game master. Because the truth is that you could run 10 sessions and you have 10 sessions worth of experience. run 1,000 sessions and you will have 1,000 sessions worth of experience, and you're going to know so much more than you did when you ran those first 10 sessions. And this brings us to continuous learning. Always seek knowledge to enhance your skills and understanding. Read rulebooks, watch tutorials, join GM forums, and learn from other experienced GMs. Adapt new ideas and techniques to fit your style, but keep learning. Always keep learning. For me, this comes in many forms. I want to be a player. I play in games. This teaches me more about being a GM than almost anything else. Studying under great GMs, or even more so, playing games with GMs who are not as experienced. They help me to see blind spots in my own games. Because if I play and something happens and I think to myself, that wasn't super fun, guess what? Now I need to look at myself. Am I doing that in my games? Sometimes the uncomfortable answer is yes, to some degree. And this is a tremendous learning opportunity. Reading the rule books is another fantastic opportunity. Watching YouTube videos is another awesome way, especially watching gameplay videos or how-to videos about different things. This is all really, really useful stuff for continuing to learn. And you don't have to go crazy on this. Commit yourself to 20 minutes per day if you want to go really hardcore, or even 20 minutes per week of just studying a little bit more. Just, spend a little time educating yourself, getting better at the craft. Seeking player feedback can also fit into this category. But if you continue to learn, you will increase the upward trajectory of your arc toward greatness. And the more you learn at this point, the higher the climb and the quicker you will get up here to master level, right? Self-compassion. Let's talk about that for a second. So the thing about being a GM that's really interesting is that it can be so easy to get down on yourself because it's so performance-based. It's relatively easy to succeed at being a GM when you always feel like you're on top of it 100% and you can perform. And when I say perform, I don't just mean performing voices. I mean perform with the rules. Keep your energy high. Remember the things you need to remember, not forgetting clues or cues or objectives, and, keeping things straight with the mysteries and whatnot, like, giving all the players ample screen time. Staying on top of it feels good. But what happens when we're not performing at 100%? What if you show up to the game and you have low energy? What if you're having an off night? What if you're a little bit stressed out about other things in your life and it's distracting you a little bit from running the game? But you want to run the game because this is your fun thing. This is your hobby. Okay. Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you right now the number of perfect sessions I've run. I can remember exactly how many I've run. It is a big 0. I have never run a perfect session. I could always do a little better, right? And this is totally fine. This is totally fine. Being a GM requires us to practice a very high level of self-compassion. We must be kind to ourselves. We must be gentle with ourselves. I could just stay awake all night after an iffy session, a session where I felt like I didn't do so great, and I could just ruminate on it, and I'll just think, oh, what a disaster. And I'll just think about what maybe my players won't want to play again, or maybe they hated it, or maybe it was no fun. Maybe I wasted their valuable time. Friends, you have to stop. We have to stop. I've learned a long time ago now that worrying about those things is nowhere near as important as just showing up, having fun, engaging in the hobby joyfully, prepping for the next session. Cast those worries away. I know it's hard to do, but the truth is that your players probably appreciate you a lot more than you think, and you probably do a much better job than you give yourself credit for, and you probably deserve to feel way better about every single session than you do. And that's the truth of it. That's just the truth of it. Be kind to yourself and acknowledge that making mistakes is part of the learning process. Reflect on your sessions without harsh criticism. Celebrate your successes and view mistakes as lessons rather than failures, and laugh about them. It's really okay. So I'm going to bring this to a conclusion here. Your improvement as a game master is a combination of really these 4 elements working together in harmony. Start running games. Get practical experience, okay? Stay persistent. Keep going despite obstacles. Keep practicing. Keep at it. Don't give up. Take a break if you need to, but don't give up. Keep learning. Expand your knowledge and skills. And be kind to yourself. Maintain a positive mindset. Friends, if you can manage to follow this formula and you just stick with it, You are going to get so much out of this hobby. You are going to get so much positivity. You're going to make so many friends. You're going to create so much community. You're going to have so many fun times. You're going to laugh so much. You're going to feel so many epic moments. There are going to be so many epic moments of you and your friends creating unbelievably awesome narratives for the characters and telling a big story that you're all going to remember, creating intellectual art that is invaluable. All of this is very important. I believe it's actually important for our life. And being a GM is a very noble venture. And if you want to be a GM, you should be a GM. You should pursue this. You don't have to do it every day or every week. Do what you have time for. Also remember that it's a hobby. It's something for fun, unless you're doing it like professionally, which is a kind of a slightly different conversation. But still, these things still apply to professional GMs because professional GMs need to go through all of this to get to the point where they feel good about and are able to charge for the service of being a game master, which is a valuable service. So don't give up. Stick with it. It's worth it. I believe in you. I want you to succeed, and I believe you can and will succeed. So that is going to conclude my discussion that I feel like every GM needs to hear. And I hope that you've heard it, and I hope that it has inspired you to pick up those dice again and go back out there and run another session and keep doing it as long as you want to. And that's going to conclude this video. Thank you so much for coming back to another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm here every single day talking about the best game in the world, D&D. So I will see you awesome people on the next one.